You're listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between a fit body and positive mental health. And our big mission? It's to help 10,000 runners to develop fitter minds in the next 2 years. I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Welcome to this episode of the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we talk to Tim Gambles. Tim is a musician and a runner. How cool is that? I think he's the first musician runner that we've had on the podcast. And he says that if it wasn't for running, he doesn't think he'd be a musician. So that's really interesting. Enjoy. Today on Fit Mind, Fit Body, I am absolutely over the moon because I finally get to speak to Mr. Tim Gambles. Welcome, Tim.
Hello, how are we doing?
Really good. I've actually been badgering Tim, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Probably. It's been a while.
I've been very persistent. In fact, it might be longer than that. Go. I'm so glad that you're here, especially as you're going to leave the state, where we can talk about that in a minute. Not that we couldn't have done this, no matter where you were in the world, but it is nice to know you're only just down the road. While I'm talking to you. All right. For those people out there who don't know who you are, let's wind it back a bit and tell us where you grew up and what that was like for you.
Yep. So I'm pretty well Tassie born and bred. I did live abroad for a few years in New Zealand, but most of the time I've spent my life here. I've been, in terms of running, I've been doing it since I was about 5 years old, when mum and dad would take me along to Launceston Running Club and all of those and various school stuff that we always do, the school cross country, and used to love the athletics carnival and all of that.
Do you remember what you thought about it when you were young, that running or just sport in general? Was it something you looked forward to when you were a kid?
And as a kid, being very competitive, wanting to always try and sort of go as best as I could, sort of thing. Definitely. Always had a sprint finish, definitely, no matter what.
So I happen to know you've got a brother who's quite good at sport.
Yeah.
Can you remember thinking about that when you were a kid as well? Was there any kind of competition in your head, even though he's a little bit older than you?
Not the age gap between us is, I think it's 16 years or 17 years. So in terms of competitiveness, no, but definitely the example that it sets in terms of doing sports. And my dad was very much the same, and my mum's the same too. Pretty much everyone in my family at some point has done sport or continues to do sport.
Yeah.
At a level.
That is so cool, because there are a lot of people who can't say that, because once people get to an adult, they often don't continue. They think sport is something that kids do. And so you've been really lucky, I think, to have so many adults in your life like that.
Yeah, a lot of people get in that trap of you just do it while you're at school and then that's it.
Yeah,
definitely.
So you left school. What did you do then?
So I finished my last week of college, so grade 12 college, and I think before I'd even got into exams, I went straight into being a full-time musician.
Whoa.
And started on trying to get regular gigs and shows and being able to make a living just from doing that. And then I continued that on for right up until COVID. So it was about 4 or 5 years.
Wow. So that for most people, that's like something they do as a hobby, unless something, amazing happens, and then they can, take it further, obviously. But to everybody in the outside world, that appears to be something that happens rarely, that people get to take that passion for music or acting or one of those kind of things into a much bigger circle. And it does seem that you've been able to, at least in our space here in Tassie and to a degree in Australia as well, been able to make a few more steps in that direction. Why do you think that is? Is it
Well,
just been persistence?
well, there's obviously going to be some of that. Like, I'm more than happy to annoy my way into getting into things, 100%. But like, I think what you're saying there with people sort of not really understanding, or maybe thinking, oh wow, that's massive, how are you earning earning all your money from that, is probably because there's so many different levels you can be a professional musician. Like, it's not all just superstars. I have a few musician friends, and we talk about this quite a bit, and we talk about a few different concepts on what makes a successful musician or a professional. If you're earning enough to be a living, that's the first stage. Like, be a multi-million-dollar superstardom kind of thing. It's, if you're just earning a decent wage like you would at any other job, then yeah, that's what you do, and then it can go there. And then we're talking about what makes a successful musician. Well, you know, if you had 1,000 fans who are willing to spend $100 a year on you, that's quite it's a very good wage, actually. That's pretty good. Like, a lot of people are very content with that, and it suddenly doesn't sound that ridiculous. Getting 1,000 worldwide doesn't seem like some ridiculous sort of goal to try and have. And so I think people sort of, they skip all that part of it and go straight to like that superstardom level of musician, which we'd all love. I mean, myself, I'd love to get to that too, and I'm going to still aim for it. But there are different tiers of this sort of, I do definitely.
And, you know, as you pointed out, success is not, that it's a very relative term. It's not, success for one person is completely different to the success for another person. There's somebody who just wants to go down and sing at the beach or busk occasionally or whatever, and if that is what they really want to do, that's successful. So it's interesting. It's good that you put it that way. There is something about having a career in this kind of work that you do that seems to almost be anti sport or running, because it's always it's in that, or most of it appears to be, and that's the problem. We probably all have perceptions of stuff, and that is that it's all at nighttime and you don't get a lot of sleep. And how does that then fit with any sort of, you know, ability to maintain your running or whatever it is you're doing?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to realize is that I think one of the big reasons that sport is so separate to music is that it actually starts at school. It's those kind of little groups that you get into. So it's the jocks and the musos, you know, or, you know, that kind of separation that you end up with. And I always kind of floated in both. And because I come from a sporty family, but my family's actually very musical too. I'm a highly trained classical pianist, and dad's a very good singer and guitarist and can pretty much pick up any instrument and play it. Plus my siblings have all played at some point and various things. So my family was doing both. So I never saw that kind of divide that I think a lot do. So when I talk to musicians and they're like, why do you run, or why do you do that stuff? Like, it seems so strange to them. I think it's because they were kind of alienated from it. There was such separation, probably right back starting in school and then onwards. You know, you either go off and play footy or you go to the music room, and you don't do both.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really interesting. What about, like, because this sort of music that you're doing is like, so pub, it's night stuff. It tends to be night stuff. I know that you do day concerts and stuff like that too, but how does that fit with, say, training for an ultra marathon? How do you fit it all in? Because this seems challenging.
So I definitely, I'm the kind of person who takes things up and tends to start off with the idea of, I'll just do this for a bit of fun and every now and then, and I probably then get quite invested in it. And running was definitely like that for me. So I mean, it's that whole concept of, if you want it enough, you just make it work. So I train and still do occasionally. I would like finish a gig at midnight, go home, have something to eat, and then by 1:30 I'm out the door and I'm going to run until 4 a.m. I did that regularly all the time. the one time you wouldn't catch me running actually was getting up early and going for a 6 a.m. run. I might be finishing one, but I would definitely not be heading off. So you just make it work. You know, my body clock was so used to being up at nights that even if I didn't have a show to play somewhere, I would probably still not leave till night time anyway.
Wow. So you just, I mean, I suppose what you're saying, you sort of said that before, is if you really want it, you fit it in around what you're doing. So obviously the music is really important because it's your career, and the running is really important for other reasons. So why is running important to you? Which is a good question.
So it's actually the fact that it is so opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So when the work that I do, if we talk about my music work, people get to see the performances, they get to see the end product, but what they're not seeing, 95% of the time I'm sat at a computer, or I'm sat at my desk with an instrument, or I'm very sort of stuck in one spot in a dark studio somewhere, or like that kind of thing, where that's where I'm actually putting in the hard work. And it's kind of almost like, look, I'm not going to compare it to an office job because I think it's a lot better and cooler, but into the mobility side of it, and that kind of being stuck in one spot and not moving about for a day, that's where it is similar. Like I can go into my studio at 10 o'clock in the morning, mm-hmm. and I'll have a lunch break at 12:30 for maybe half an hour, and then I go back in, mm-hmm. and then I'm in there until 5:30, 6 p.m. And so running for me is that chance to then do something that is completely nothing to do with music. I don't even listen to music when I run for that exact reason, because I'm trying to have a break. I'm giving my ears a break from listening to stuff. I'm really interested in running techniques, so I focus a lot on that, because then my brain's not thinking about my work and what gigs are coming or who I need to contact or song ideas or anything. It's a complete and full shut off from that.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you, what do you think about? So obviously what you think about is not, and then I thought maybe you write songs or something running, but obviously not.
Yeah. So the last thing I'm thinking about when I'm running is music.
Wow. So do you find you're staying in touch with your body? Like because I tend to do a check-in. I talked about a little bit on the podcast when I first start running, just to see how my body's going, and then just be more mindful about where I am. I try and do that a bit more rather than listening to lots of stuff, which is a little bit like what you're saying. What kind of things do you think are going through your head if it's not your day and music and all that?
The first thing that I think of is my technique. Like I am really interested in that at the moment, and I've been, particularly in the last 12 months, I've just, for no other reason than to just try and be a better runner, but also be injury free and enjoy it more. I've been really interested in it, and so I start off every run with pretty much with that in mind. Okay, so I'll go out the gate and it's okay. How's my form? Am I holding the right position? Am I going out too quick? Am I going out too slow? For whatever run it is that I'm doing that day, and so on. And that's sort of how I'll start to begin with, definitely.
So what is your favorite kind of running? What do you like the most?
Mountain climbing. So completely technical trail. So like my favorite race, for those who know Triple Tops Mountain Run, is my all-time favorite run, and is what got me into that style of running. I think I've done 5.
Wow.
I think it's something like that. I've done around 5 of them, maybe 5 or 6, I'm not sure. And I really enjoy the technical descending in particular. Same thing again, like when you're flying down a hill as quickly as you can, and it's no matter what level it is, because it's relative again to your ability. So whatever the best is that you can do when you're descending, you've got to be fully focused. You're doing that one thing. Like as soon as your mind wanders, you're going to fall, or you're going to catch your toe on something, or you're going to have to slow up, or you're not going to do it as well. And so I really enjoy that too, because it's once again it gives you one thing to focus on, and that's all you're doing. There's nothing else, just that one thing. Get down the hill.
I think that run and that descent down the scree is my favorite.
100%.
It's controlled falling. That's what I call it. And yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You have to be, because the problem is if you're not focused, the results could be quite catastrophic. So,
Yeah,
like,
definitely. Like, it's quite funny. Like, I've been pretty lucky. I've only had a couple of stacks throughout when I've been running, and the majority of them have been on the flat because I took my brain off, and I might have started to wander a bit, or I might have even work might have crept in or something. I don't know. And then I, trip over.
You trip over nothing. Yeah, I do that. Totally.
I'm more than comfortable to throw myself down something like triple tops and not fall.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised because I don't even really like heights, but I really like that controlled falling, and I'm not worried because I trust myself, I guess, and I'm focused on either where my hand's going to grab a tree or my foot's going to land, and that's it.
I think it's very different from heights as well, because I'm actually a fan of heights either, but I'm more than happy to run a ridge line or a cliff line or descend down something really steep or any of that, because I'm on my own 2 feet. Like, I sort of trust that, but you'll never catch me going skydiving or bungee jumping or anything like that. You can keep all of those sort of things.
Fair enough. All right, so you love trails, especially ones that are in the mountains.
Yep.
How do you fit your training in at the moment around all this busy, what would seem like it's not a crazy life, but just a different, it's a bit like shift work, I suppose, a different style of life than most people have.
It is a bit crazy at the moment because with COVID coming and the industry that I'm in, it's not been exactly an easy time. And so for the first time since college, I had to go and get another job. And because
I know where you got the jobs.
And which is at the running company, which is awesome because I then get to still be in something that I'm very interested in and enjoy. So I'm very lucky to have gotten that. I could have been, working at Woolies stacking shelves or something like that, or doing something where I was sort of a bit more mind numbing, but I still get to do something I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm working that. I'm trying to record an album. I'm moving away to the UK in 2.5 months with a 1 ticket to try and break out and do something there. I'm getting as many gigs as I can before I go, and I'm running. So yes, it's completely crazy at the moment.
So some people would say that would be the first thing that they would drop would be the running, I would think, in that list that you just read out, because none of the others seem very negotiable. Do you think of running as negotiable in your life, or is it a not negotiable?
It's a not negotiable, because if I drop the running, then all the other stuff will eventually start to crumble as well. So running is such a good thing to focus your mind or give you that break when you might not actually give yourself the break. Yes, I'm still exerting myself physically, but I'm giving my brain a break from stuff. And one of the things that I definitely fall in the trap of is that I can lose track of time working on things, and suddenly, I've not slept properly for 3 nights in a row, or I'm just burning myself out doing the exact same sort of stuff over and over, working on my music, and I'm not doing anything else. And then I get to a point where it's like, I need to go away. And I'll suddenly have a week where I can't go in the studio. Mm-hmm. So I've learned from that in the past. And so if I drop running, that's the sort of consequence of that. So no, running has to stay, definitely.
We were talking just before we got on too about physical reasons why running. I mean, I know you're talking just then about mental and physical to a degree, because it helps you sleep and all that kind of stuff. But even like as a singer, how running must also help, I would think, with the oxygen in your lungs and all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And so I'm a frontman, so I need to be able to perform. I need to be able to not only hit my notes that I'm going to sing and all of that, but do it while I'm entertaining a crowd, running up and down the front of a stage, being a performer, which is a very physical thing. I'm exhausted after a show. It's like doing a workout. It's massively taxing. So fitness is huge for me. Otherwise, I'd be out of breath, or I'd have to stand still and not be as good at performing. And I'm not really happy to do either of those. So yeah, I definitely am very conscious of that.
Yeah. It's interesting. The picture that we have of a lot of people in, what kind of music do you say that your music is?
Oh, well, I do a range, but the main two that I do is a sort of a pop rock, kind of like, I guess if you think of things like In Excess, Harry Styles, maybe even Queen influences, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also play in a metal band, so like heavy grunge sort of style metal. They're the two main ones. So they're both high impact performances, definitely.
From the outside world, for those of us who are just full of judgment's not the right word, but we perceive those worlds in a certain way. They don't seem like the fittest people, because they always seem to be, you know, excess drinking, excess smoking, excess whatever. And I'm sure that's actually not true for a large percentage of them, but you just get that feeling, and that lack of sleep and all of that it's just burns you out so quickly.
Yeah, and once again, it actually comes right back to what I said before, is how much do you want it? You can waste your time doing that side of things as a musician, because we've seen the big rock stars maybe do it in like 70s, 80s, 90s, so on. Or you can, you know, have a better crack at it and not have those things get in the way. And for me too, because I do take my running seriously, and you know, like, I want to be better at it, the last thing I'm going to do is start doing drugs or drinking too much or any of that stuff. It'll stuff my running up.
Don't worry about your career. It's your running.
So I like being healthy, you know, like, so I think that's for me personally. In terms of other musicians I know who still choose not to do those things, it's because of that whole career thing, you know. It's once again people not sort of seeing that there's different levels of musician. You say the word musician and they picture whoever's the biggest person right now, or they think of the greats and stuff like that, who, a lot of them have done they've partied really, really hard. And that's why we've learned from it. We look at that and go, yep, that's probably not a great idea.
Yes, it is interesting. Okay, so what is it that you want to do with your running coming up? Have you got like goals and at the moment? Like, I know you want to improve your form, and it's good for helping with your singing and all of that, but do you find that you're quite goal driven with it?
Yeah, I definitely need to either enter things or set some sort of challenge or something, because it helps me, because it's that sort of, once again, it's that opposites thing. My music is very unpredictable. A lot of the time I can get calls to go and do things out of nowhere. I sleep at whatever time it is that I can fit it in, rather than having a proper schedule. Like that, it is just a very unpredictable kind of thing. So if I can make my running really predictable by having a program, because I'm aiming at a goal, it's really nice.
Yeah. So it's the thing that sits around with a bit of stability for you in the background.
Yeah. I know no matter what's happening that week, I'm going to run 4 times, and it's going to be these 4 sessions.
I kind of know the answer to this question. I assume you don't run with people that often, because there aren't that many people getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go for a run with you.
I do my best, because I really do enjoy running with others, so I fit it in when I can. But yes, it is quite difficult. A couple of times I've dragged people along for night runs. If they were training for something where they would have to run through the night, it's a good opportunity to practice it. They can me, but I run with Old Train when I can fit it in, and I run with Mike's group from the running company when I can fit it in. And I try and go to certain events and stuff as well. And, you know, like that, we have such a good running community down here, so I still want to try and be a part of it as much as I can. But yeah, definitely, I find sometimes if work's been full on or very unpredictable, I can have a 3-week stint where every run is by myself, because it's just, I can't line it up with people. I have to just, I've got a spare minute now, I'm going.
Yeah, I've got to fit it in.
For instance, Friday last week, I had a gig out at Hadsman, and I went to where I was playing, and there was a place for me to get ready and have a shower and everything. So I went a little bit earlier, I set up everything, and then I went for a run.
Excellent.
Just fit it in. I had 30 minutes, and I went and did a quick 30-minute run, straight back, got ready, played the show.
Do you feel like that was that the times where you've played after doing that, I don't know how often you've done that, but that the performances were even better or something? Like, just because there's been so much neuroscience now around what happens to our brains when we go for a run.
Yep.
And it's really positive. So things like education outcomes are much more improved if kids have gone out and done a little bit of exercise, for example, before they sit down and do maths and reading and stuff. So I just wondered whether that you felt like that gig, for example, just went smoothly, or you had more energy. I don't know, just was better. Perhaps.
So I definitely will always try, if I know I've got a show on that night. It's a bit harder when it's a day show, but if it's a nighttime show, at some point in that day, I'll try and do something. It doesn't have to be a run. I really enjoy rock climbing at the moment, or paddleboarding, but just something physical, something where I'm going to sort of exert myself a little bit, even if it's only for 30 minutes. Because, yes, I've noticed the change in my performances since doing it. Makes a matter.
Yeah, it's fascinating, really. I am like the neuroscience is actually still quite new relating to all of this. It always amazes me just how much we don't know about a brain that we've always had along with the body. Like, we just don't know. No, we hardly know anything. It's crazy and exciting all at the same time. Yeah. I wanted to talk just a little bit about that crazy run that you did a couple of years ago as a fundraiser at your place. Tell us a little bit about that, because there might be people who weren't aware of it at the time. I just thought it's really cool.
Yeah. Okay. So the basics of it, it was just around the time that Tassie actually went into that first lockdown. It was kind of the only one we really ever did. It was like 6 to 8 weeks or something, whatever it was. Anyway, it was around that time that the idea was formed, because we weren't allowed to go and run places, and I was sort of a bit more stuck. So I live on 5 acres. And I started to sort of carve a bit of a track in, because I needed somewhere to run, because I was going crazy and I wanted to run on a trail. So I thought, I basically just put some flags down, and I thought, if I run on this enough times, I'll wear it down. That was my starting point. And then, typical sort of me, I couldn't just leave it there. And it escalated to, I had a group of runners come around when we were finally allowed to have people again. I think it was capped at like 10 or whatever it is. And we had a little like afternoon runs and laps, have a few drinks and sort of barbecue and catch up and stuff like that. And that broke the track in even more, and it started to wear in. And then I started putting some gravel on it and just nick bits and stuff like that. And then unfortunately, at the time, one of my best mates' wife was diagnosed with cancer, with breast cancer. And I had this track, and I just saw an opportunity for us to do something for a charity that was to do with cancer. And so this crazy idea to run for 24 hours round this little track I'd built was born. Wow. The track is exactly 1 kilometre. I measured it with one of those, those wheels you would have had at school where you walk along. And I measured it with one. Plus I used GPS to double check it, and it was exactly 1 kilometre with 42 meters gain and loss per lap. And we called it, so we had the event and we called it Ange's Kicking It 24-hour run. The phrase about, because Ange has a wicked sense of humor, and so her whole thing the entire time she was battling the cancer was that she was I probably can't say it, but she was kicking it in the, and I'll leave it at that. That was and we loved that, so we called it Ange's Kicking It 24-hour run. We had musicians live streaming from my studio here. We had a lot of good publicity and stuff, and she chose the charity, so which was Love Your Sister, which was the guy, I don't know if you remember, he unicycled around Australia.
I have certainly heard of it.
Yeah. I think actor or something, and he did, his sister got cancer, and he did this massive unicycle around Australia, and and he's the one who started that charity, and it went from there. So yeah, I ran for 24 hours around my backyard and tried to complete as many laps as I could. I ended up doing 104 laps, so 104 kilometers, and fourth 168 meters gain, or whatever it was, something like that. Yeah, I just over 4,000 meters gain, and loss. And we raised, it was around the 12.5 grand mark.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
well
which
done.
was like, I set the goal at 5 and thought that was being too ambitious. And we passed 5 so quickly, I couldn't believe it. I was like, okay, move the goalposts here, because this is going bigger than I thought it was going to. and it did. I ended up on, like we talked about it, on Win News, Southern Cross, Chile FM, LA FM, the Examiner, I think the Mercury, like all these different platforms that I didn't expect it to get on. I had businesses in town donating things, and I had a Method Plus Action, the gym, they gave us some memberships to sort of give away as a prize and stuff like that. So it's awesome. Like, I just got so much, it became such a bigger thing than what I expected, and which was really cool, because then all I had to do was just try and run around in circles for 24 hours. Which is great.
And how did you find that, the running around in circles for 24 hours?
Well, I should mention I was actually quite sick going into it. So the run was, I started at lunchtime Saturday and was finishing lunchtime Sunday, because I wanted to sleep in. I don't like getting up early. So I woke up in the middle of the night, sort of Thursday night or early Friday morning, feeling really, really sore, like under my armpit, in where the lymph nodes are. I was like, that's really, really hurting. And so I got up. I was like, I was just going to get a glass of water, and I got up and I fainted, pretty much like on the way to the kitchen. All right, okay, this isn't good. I went back to bed, and I managed to get into like an emergency appointment with my doctor that morning, which was really lucky. And I'd had a cut on my hand, and then it got infected. I didn't realize, and I had a bit of blood poisoning going on, and my lymph nodes, which was why I was having that pain there. I asked him if I should do the run or not, and he's not my doctor anymore, but at the time he's also a mate as well as a doctor and a runner himself, and he went, "Oh, yeah, you should be right." So we went for it. He gave me some antibiotics, but they didn't really kick in until well after the run, because it takes a little while. So when it came time to do the actual run, I was having a lot of issues with body temperature, because I was going through fevers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had quite a few sets of clothing laid out, because I expected to need to change, and it was also in August, so it was winter, and I expected it to be cold overnight and all of that. And I went through every item of clothing I had, because I would sweat, and then I would freeze straight after. I just went through this cycle, particularly through the worst of the night, over and over. And it was quite funny. So Jono and Amy were supporting me on that. I'm sure everyone knows Jono and Amy. They've been on already, haven't they?
They
both
have,
today?
yeah, earlier on.
I ended up wearing some of Jono's clothes because I didn't have to wear, which is quite funny, because there's a considerable height difference between the two of us.
There is.
Look, wearing a crop top, it was great. But the hardest point was sort of that 4 a.m. If anyone's done a 24-hour, they probably can vouch for this. 4 a.m. or 3:30-ish onwards until the sun comes up is the worst. It just feels like you've been in the dark for so long. You've been staring at that one little spotlight for ages. All the fatigue's really starting to ramp up. It's really tiring. You just want to sleep. You don't even have muscle soreness anymore. You just want sleep. But the funny thing is, as soon as that first bit of light came up, it was like a complete reset. I hadn't stopped, but it felt like I'd been rested.
Yeah.
And so 6:37, the sun was properly up. I started to feel better and better. And I actually had a pretty good final 5 hours up until lunchtime, because it was just like, I guess it's a natural sort of thing with the sun and nighttime.
Vitamin D, yeah.
Yeah, so as soon as it came, my body started to wake up and feel better and all of that. But the few hours that were just before it were just horrendous.
It's the melatonin. That's what I'm trying to think. What is that stuff called? It's all that stuff to do with the sun and not the sun, and probably that lack of sleep and all of that. It's
yeah. Well, if you were to sleep based on the sun, you'd probably have quite a good cycle.
But
so
you don't do that.
I don't do that, no. Which had advantage going in. I at least got through the 1 a.m., 2 a.m. sort of mark all right. It wasn't until that 3:34, which is when I would probably go to bed from gigs, that it really
kicked in. Oh, so I guess for me, I'm thinking, having done, I've done, I don't know, 60K is the furthest. That's the furthest I've been. But it's what goes on in your mind that pushes you past. Even you said then that how hard it was between the 3 a.m. and when the sun finally came up. Just what it takes mentally to keep going, especially when we do these runs, especially these long runs. Nobody's making us do them. Like we are voluntarily putting ourselves through this. And I've certainly had those conversations with myself. I don't have to do this, blah, 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 while I'm in the middle of pain or whatever is in some long run. How do you get yourself through those moments?
I mean, that's actually an excellent point. I remember Jono at one point saying, remember, you chose to do this. And it's, yep, you're right. And that's actually a really good point. You've got to remember that. Otherwise, why are you there?
Yeah.
In terms of, like, if I were to talk like the best things to help push you through, surrounding yourself with good people is definitely a good start.
Yeah.
Right, support is massive. So I had Jono and Amy, and I had mum and dad, and that was the main group. But then I also had friends call in and other family members call in and stuff on and off. And I had a few volunteers help out with it also. I had at least one person on lap counting duty at all times. They hour shift or 2 hours or something. And that was really, really good too. So I'd see a new face every now and then as well. So in terms of, if we talk about just purely that 24-hour, I actually think it was not the easiest way to do it, but the fact that every lap I came round past them again.
Yeah.
I was constantly around people. They could come and run laps with me. I was never really left alone. Now, I've done ultras where I've DNF'd. I've had a few DNFs, which is just part of it. And the thing I struggle with most is the big sections where you're on your own and you start getting in your own head. And I'm still learning about that. Like, so if I were to say what should you do about it, is just keep learning from each one, because I've had plenty of DNFs and then I've had successful ones as well, and each time I've learned something new, or you just sort of you get better at it, definitely.
But it's interesting. I spoke to Pat Farmer, so he's one of Australia's ultra distance superstars, and he said something about he really likes the long run. He does the multi-day ones as well, because they break you down and then build you up again. So he has this kind of whole, so it's almost like at the end of the run you're kind of a new person to a degree, because it's kind of broken you down. I thought it was kind of an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, that is, I can't say that's how it crosses my mind, but actually that's probably the best advice I could ever say in terms of running in general, is that you've got to figure out what works for you, because we are all so different. Because what you just said then didn't relate to me at all, but that's just because it's just not how I would think about it.
Yeah.
And I think we all are very individual in that, and that's whether you're doing a 5K or an ultra or whatever. Like, you've got to figure out why you're doing it. Do you enjoy it? And what is it that gets you through it?
Why did you enter in the first place? Like some of the people I talk to, they only enter. So I've spoken to heaps of people who do these multi-day events, like making me think it's even possible. They just want to get to the cutoffs, like each day. That's all they care about. They don't, and they just want to finish their ideal is to finish before a cutoff, and that's it. They don't care about anything else. They don't even care about the medal. They just, to them, that's their goal. Other people, they want the goal, they want the medal or whatever. And other people obviously have, time goals and stuff too. So, it's just, there's lots of, and other people say, actually, I hate the event. A number of people have said that. I hate the event. I really like the training. So that's why they sign up to the things and usually turn up, but it's the training they really enjoy, not the actual event.
I probably swing that way a bit more too. I really enjoy the training approach and the training blocks that you do in the lead up to stuff. But I definitely get nervous about events too, so that doesn't help. I always get nervous. I can't help it. I don't know why. There's no reason to, because all I'm ever doing is just wanting to finish, but I do get very nervous about them. So I enjoy it more.
Yeah. Do you get nervous when you're doing a gig? You must get a bit nervous, I suppose, but how do you compare it to, say, doing an event?
They're very similar, actually. And my sort of thinking on it is the reason you're nervous is because you care. Mm-hmm. Like, I actually get more worried when I'm not nervous.
Yeah.
So when I first started playing gigs, I did a lot of cover gigs. And I was doing that a lot more, and over time I've branched into doing my own stuff, and now I only do my material. Mm-hmm. I don't play those sort of pub cover gigs anymore. And towards the end of those gigs, I was definitely not nervous anymore, but I also didn't care. I was just over it. Yeah. And I could tell the difference. So now when I have a show coming up and I'm nervous and a bit jittery before I get on, I really like it, because I know that it means I care and I'm going to be focused and I'm ready to put all into it. And that's why I'm nervous. Yeah. The only difference then between that and running is that I don't like how it feels when I'm running.
Yeah, I think with this thing, I've done a lot of presentations, a lot of workshops to public, a lot of that stuff over the years in my work career. And I get nervous before I start talking. And then once I start talking, usually it all settles down and everything flows really nicely. But it's almost like you have to, as you said, I think that level of energy doesn't come if you don't have a little bit of nerves, or at least for most people. I have heard people talk about it. And the same when I'm running, I'm very nervous before the start of a race, no matter the level of it, whether it's a marathon with thousands of people or a tiny little local race, I can be really nervous. But the moment I start running, it just goes away. The nerves just disappear. So that's...
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think it's the exact same for me.
You've had some injuries, Tim, with your running?
Which ones? Do you mean recent?
Well, it doesn't matter. Any kind of injuries. Just want to... How do you feel when you do? Okay, so yes, you've had injuries. So how do you feel when you can't run for a little while? I guess that's what we want to get into a little bit.
Yeah, I've never had two that have actually stopped me from running. Okay. The first one is the reason I started looking into technique. So I had that injury. I wasn't really able to do much running. I had a knee brace on for a little while. I basically just damaged my patella tendon.
Is that all?
And
sounds serious.
But it wasn't too bad. Like, it was probably, I don't know. I was pretty stubborn. I was back to running reasonably quickly, and then I sort of re-injured it a few times, like we all do. But the reason it was injured in the first place was because of poor form. I wasn't striking the ground properly. There was too much shock going through the kneecap area, and I was overloading that tendon, and I did a multi-day thing, and on day 5 it went. And so that was the motivator. So the first thing I did was I went around finding people who know what they're doing and tell me things about that stuff, which I think is actually a really good thing to do. Don't try and just sort it out yourself. Surround yourself by people who know what they're talking about.
You mean not Google? I Google stuff.
So the balance physio in Launceston, there's a guy there who's awesome. And actually there's been a few there that have been really good. So they've helped me, and I've worked on technique with them. Plus I pick Jono and Amy's brains all the time. And sort of various stuff like that. And I've asked my brother about it too. And so that was the motivation to do that. So I didn't notice the time off running because I was focused on technique stuff. The second time, however, which is the most recent, I've hurt my back quite badly about 4 weeks ago. So, and I have only run 2 or 3 times since, and only one of those has been without any back pain, and that has sucked. I've not enjoyed the time off running at all. So I guess the things I've been doing is try and find alternatives that are at least some sort of physical activity. I've been rock climbing. That's been fine because I stretch out a lot, and I've steered away from the more technical climbs and done the simpler ones and used it more as a stretching sort of exercise. And just so that I can also go and do something. Other than that, I've not been able to do that much. So yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it really does.
So, this is a silly question, and have you always called yourself a runner, or do you call yourself a runner, I suppose?
I don't know. I've never thought of it like that.
You're a musician, but are you also a runner?
I'm a musician running. I think that's what I am.
Say it again.
I don't know. I'm a musician who enjoys running. I guess that's what I'd call it. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm a runner. I do enough of it.
I think you're a runner. But but it's perception again. It's completely, there's no right or wrong answer. I've actually had people on here who've run for years and they've said, no, I don't think of myself as a runner at all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just not really something I think of that like that way. Whereas if you were to ask me about music, I'm like, yeah, I'm a musician.
Yeah, of course, dude. Well, definitely.
I think probably I think the reason would be because running is still, the reasons behind why I run and all of that are still very tied in with music. Yeah. So the reason I run is because of being a musician. So to me, it all just comes back to that anyway.
Well, I think it's all very tied into your identity, both music and running. They don't necessarily, it's not one or the other kind of thing. I think you're both things are part of who you are. Like most of us, we have different things that we do that make up who we are. How long do you think you'll run for?
For as long as I can. I mean, one of the motivators of learning the technique is that you can run for longer and with less injuries and less things to stop you. So, yeah, I would hope that I'm still running when I'm 70. Yeah.
Well, that doesn't feel that far away for me now. So I'm planning to run well past 70. I remember when I used to think that was a long way away. When you moved to Europe, have you already looked at some races or, because they have some pretty cool events over there? I just wondered, because I know that you do like to, enter cool events and events that are, they have heaps of cool trail events and stuff. Have you looked at any that you might?
Yes, the one that I actually injured my knee on, the multi-day one, I'm going to go back and do that because I want to finish it. So,
which one is that?
Well, it's not so much of an event. It's more like a running tour / pub to pub thing too. It's with Chris Ord, and if anyone knows who Chris Ord is, they'll instantly sort of go, oh yes, that makes sense. He runs a really cool tour. It's from one side of England to the other. It's called Coast to Coast, Pub to Pub, and it's 10 days of running. The sort of shortest day I think is around the 21k mark. Longest days are around the 44. All through just English countryside and mountainous areas and stuff like that. And you sample all of the pints along the way as well.
What if you don't like beer? Can you?
There do like gin or wine.
Oh, gin would be good. Yeah. Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So it's not like a race or anything, and it's very casual and just lots of fun, but it's still solid running. There's big elevation and there's big days. Like 44k is not a short distance, and you back it up multiple days in a row. so it's still actually a challenge, but it with no competitiveness to it. We're making jokes and carrying on a lot of the time, and probably would have a few too many beers and all of that sort of stuff as well. So it's a very different approach, and that's sort of, I like trail running quite a lot when it's that kind of relaxed thing. I remember one of the first sort of, I think it was like the second trail race I ever did, someone stopped at about 1 kilometer in to this big climb and pulled their phone out, took a photo. I was like, that's actually, yeah, that's really cool. It is a really pretty scene right there. You take a photo of that. But having done more of the road running stuff beforehand and not I hadn't done trail as much at that point. The road running is usually very time focused and all those things. You definitely want to stop because there's a pretty scenery to take a photo. Yeah. But I liked that. I love that sort of concept of, it's, unless you're in the top like 5 or something, which most of us aren't. Most of us are just running because we enjoy it and we enter the events because we like it. You don't really need to worry. Like, stop and take a photo.
And there's plenty of walking. Even Amy said that when she was on. Like, just because you're running or you're a runner doesn't mean you can't walk. And definitely in trails, there's lots of walking.
There's lots of, definitely, yeah.
I like that that you're pointing out there with the taking the photos and stuff, because it's you're there, you're being there in the moment. You're not letting it all just rush past you, like when you're road running, because it's all about the time, as you said. It's a different focus, I think. Yeah, there's places for both, but it's a completely different sort of focus, I think. And if you're into nature and stuff, trail running tends to be the direction you head, I think, with your running.
Places you've not been before. And like I said, unless you're a pro in the top 10 or something, like, there's no need for you to stop yourself from enjoying moments like that and having taking 10 seconds to stop and look at something. And you might lose 5 places, but like, I went from 150th to 155th. Who cares?
Yeah. So what? I saw that amazing sunrise or that cool view from up there. It just made me think of, have you met Benji? What's Benji's surname? Yeah. I had him on the podcast and he made fell running sound amazing. When you're in England, you just pop over to Wales and do some fell running.
Yeah, there's a club nearby where I'm going to be living, so I'm thinking about going and giving it a go. It looks like a lot of fun.
That looks like controlled falling. Yeah.
And the fact, like, for those who don't know, fell running tends to work off the basis of no trail. So there'll be a point that you run to at the top of a hill, and then you come back down, and it's pick your best route up there. And the people who are really good at it know how to run those lines really well up there and pick the way that they go. And those who aren't as good at it will probably take a slower way, which will be me until I can try and learn a bit more about it.
Or follow the people who are really good. I think that's what I do. I was just thinking then when you described it, is there a way that, like, the people who are really good can't be seen by the people who are just learning, so they get to learn their own? I don't know. Do they start at different times?
You've got to be able to keep up with them, though. These aren't distant times. Like, the thing that you're heading towards could be 10K in the distance.
Good point.
Or like, there's lots of different ways they do it. So, it's going to be cool.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about your music in a minute before we wrap up. But first, a question that I ask everyone is, what do you think your life would be missing if you didn't run?
I genuinely reckon I would be a musician.
You wouldn't be a musician. That's what you said.
I wouldn't have the career that I love.
You'd be stacking shelves in Woolies, like you said earlier. Something.
Well, I would have burnt myself out, and I wouldn't have. Running has provided me that break and something else to do, so that I can continue being a musician and continue putting the work in for that stuff. So, for me, my life would be missing my dream career.
Yeah, I love that. So is there anything about running that you wanted to bring out to share with people that we may not have touched on today?
I said it a little bit before, but I'll say it again. We're supposed to enjoy it. Like, just remember why you're doing it and you are enjoying it. So pick your stuff based on that. You know, whatever one is, you're doing it because you like it.
Yeah.
There is why you like it.
And it can hurt. Just because it hurts sometimes doesn't mean you don't still enjoy it. Like
Definitely.
There's this thing. Young people like you who are striving to go somewhere, and I'm being a bit serious now, who are actually, you get uncomfortable all the time, Tim. That's part of what you're doing. So you've got comfortable with being uncomfortable. There are a lot of people, not just young people, older people too, where their whole life is about searching for the most comfort that they can have. Yep. And as a result, their life doesn't grow and they get a little bit dissatisfied. I think that's what I see. Yep. Running, in part, can teach you that it's actually okay to get uncomfortable doing something that you want to do or that you enjoy, because in the end, you do get a benefit from it. All sorts of positive things come from running, just like they do from your music. So you get uncomfortable with your music as well, because that's a big part of anyone who wants to do really well in anything they're doing, has to get uncomfortable. And
you're also talking to someone who's heavily tattooed, and so more than happy to be uncomfortable to get something I like.
A little bit of pain. Well, it's only supposed to be on one arm that I can see.
Can't see is my entire torso.
Oh, ow. So anyway, that was a little bit of trying to encourage people to get uncomfortable. I think it's important, especially, in a direction that's going to take you somewhere. It's definitely getting a bit more comfortable with being uncomfortable. We all need to do a bit of that, I think. Have you got any tips for beginner runners before I talk a little bit about your music and what's happening at the moment?
That I keep repeating myself, but I think it's probably still the best thing I can say is find your reason. Just find the reason that you're going to go and run. And then it probably wouldn't hurt to go and surround yourself by people who are a bit more experienced. If you are really new to it, that's a really good time to build some good habits. And it can be simple stuff. It can be just like, I don't know, cadence or hip position or little things that will help you start off on a really good
base.
Good base, yeah, and those good habits early on. So you don't sort of, get 2 years down and then have to relearn how to do it all. Something. Because you're probably going to get addicted to it, because we seem to all get addicted to it.
We do. It's crazy. In a good way. All right. I don't want to wrap this one up before we talk a little bit about what you're doing with your music right now. So you said that you're in the middle of you're doing an album right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm working on new releases at the moment. So literally as we speak, I'm partway through tracking, and so I'll be wanting to release before I move away. I move away in June, the UK. So I'm going to be trying to release new music before then. I'm also going to be doing a couple of shows before I go. One in particular will be is yet to be announced, but will be a big sort of final show in Launceston before I do leave. Like
a farewell thing?
Yeah, kind of, but also just a last chance for me to just have a really good crack down here at a cool event that I'm putting on. So that's sort of the things I'm doing at the moment. And if anyone is interested in sort of following the music side of what I do, you can literally find me on anything. So Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. And I've got music on Spotify, Apple Music and all of that as well. And my new releases will be going up on all of that. I've got, music videos on YouTube and all of those sort of things. And it's all just literally under Tim Gamble's. I just do it under my own name.
Do you have a website?
Yep.
No, Tim Gamble. Of course, timgambles.com. I will put the links to the website and Facebook page and various other bits and pieces that I can find in the show notes too, to make it easier for people to jump on and follow your progress, because it's very exciting. You signed up to a label of sorts as well, is that right? I don't understand how the music world works apart from what I see in the movies. So
which is not accurate at all.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm signed to Jam Mountain Music. A great bunch of guys who are I've been working with for the last little while, and they're going to be working with me further once I go to the UK as well. So they're helping with that sort of transition into moving countries, and they've got a lot of really good contacts over there and all of that as well. So yeah, so they've been an awesome backing, definitely.
That's awesome. All right, I'll say a massive thank you. Don't hang up though, because I want to quickly say goodbye to you off as well. But my first and only at the moment singing runner. Any other singing runners you want to come on and chat? You're welcome. But I think Tim has shown just how amazing running can be for your life, no matter what it is you do. And obviously, you've even said if it wasn't for your running, you wouldn't be a musician. So that's a pretty big tip for running.
Exactly, definitely. And I stand by that 100%.
So thank you for sharing all of that wisdom with running that you have, not to mention the music. And we'll all keep an eye on what you're doing, and best of luck for your move to the big Europe via the UK. I'm sure you'll smash it.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. I'd love to talk to you about your running journey. So send me a message on Facebook or on the website, and let's do it. For a bunch of resources on mindful running that will help you get and stay mentally and physically fit, head over to the website fitmindfitbody.co, and I'll see you there. Plus, I'll be back here in your podcast player a few times a week. Hit subscribe now so that you don't miss an episode. And before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a review. It'll help more people to find the podcast and get inspired to start running. I'll see you soon. Bye.